Oh, what do I start?
Probably have to cut that bit out.
Out of my brother. But yeah.
We're talking about last episode.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just the feedback we've been getting. We were just talking about that before as well. Like we've had a lot of messages from people just about. I think people were messaging you personally, and then messaging me personally, and then messaging the Serve podcast. But yeah, the feedback has just been really, really amazing, and the support has been so appreciated.
Yeah, it's
grateful.
It's overwhelming, man.
Yeah,
it really is, to be able to, like, I don't know, just be so vulnerable and share all these experiences, all these stories, and then for people to be reaching out to us and then be like, hey, like, the content you guys are creating is amazing. We love it. And it's having like a profound effect on their lives. Like, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, and it's people that you wouldn't even think would be listening to, which is good because, when we got together and said, hey, let's do this podcast, it was the exact purpose. You know what I mean? Yeah. We didn't want a podcast for Christians. There's plenty of podcasts out for that. People can go to church for that. Mm-hmm. We wanted a podcast for everyone. Yeah. And just the dynamics. I've had people from jiu-jitsu, like halfway through the session, tapping the shoulder, like, hey man, I really love the podcast. It was awesome. Yeah. Like, got so much out of it. And I'm like, wow, like that's crazy. We're not even expecting you to be listening to this. And then I've got one of my clients who come to my boot camps. She was saying her husband, who's 60 years old, loves the podcast. That's right. 50 or 60. If you're 50, I'm sorry, brother. He looks like he's 35, but yeah.
Good save.
A big shout out to him. But and it's like, it was so humbling because, like, he's someone I really look up to. He's a really, really cool guy. And I'm like, for him to say, man, I can't wait for the next episode. And he was, the first day it came out, he watched episode 2, messaged me, and it's just so humbling to hear that. And that was the whole purpose of it. And, when people send us messages, we're always screenshotting and sending to each other. Yeah. And we're always like writing to each other, like, hey man, this is our reason why. This is our reason why. Just as a good reminder to stay focused and stay on that path. So, I just want to start by saying a big thank you to everyone's support. And the thing is, you can listen to us and you don't necessarily have to agree with everything that we say. And that's the beauty of this thing, that all we're doing is sharing our own experiences. And, you could have 10 different people in the room and they'd have 10 different perceptions, 10 different perspectives, 10 different philosophies of life. Yeah. And that's because their lenses are shaped from their experiences. And that's the beauty of life, right? So all we're doing is just sharing our experiences, what's brought us to this dance. And, you can pick and choose what resonates with you, what you disagree with. And the whole point of this is just to open our eyes up and just to reflect, which is really cool. And that's what's the general message that people have been sending back to us, which is cool.
Yeah, man. Like, I'm the same. I'm just like overwhelmed, like, with gratitude, just by people messaging me, calling me. And like, people that I honestly didn't expect that would love the podcast, like, love it. And it was just so humbling. It was just so rewarding. And it was just so nice just to see that people are getting something from it. They're seeing maybe some of the things that we're saying and they're applying it in their life and they're using it as tools. And I just think that's awesome. And you're right. This podcast is for everyone. And like, we don't even agree on everything. No. We probably agree on a lot of things, but we don't agree on everything. And that's okay. And like, different perspectives, different opinions, it's awesome. It's, it makes us think and makes us look at things a little bit differently. Because sometimes, like, the lenses that we look at life through sometimes can be distorted. And so having different perspectives, different ideas, and being open to that and not wanting to shut that down, I think that's where the magic works. And like, I even have a client, well, she actually doesn't train with me anymore. And, I would always talk about all these religious things and would talk a lot about parenting and relationships and all these different things. She, like I said, she's not religious, and she listened to the podcast, and, she got me like the most amazing gift. So Brunel, if you're listening or watching, like, thank you so much. Like, she got me like this really beautiful bracelet that has like the Lord's Prayer on the other side. And she was just saying stuff like she didn't realize how important religion was for me and how so much of my faith is like built into that and how she can see that. And so that just shows you like two opposing perspectives potentially, a person that's religious and a person that's not religious, how they can still share such similar values and appreciate each other and be so supportive and loving towards each other. And that like, it just made me feel so happy. Like that was really beautiful. So it was like, we're no longer training together anymore, but our friendship remains. And that's because, we share such similar values.
Yeah.
And even some of my, I went to my cousin Felipe's 30th birthday yesterday, and I had so many of my cousins coming up to me saying, hey, I'm loving the podcast. I loved the last episode that you guys did on faith. And it was just beautiful to hear, man. It just really was. And I'm so happy that this is something that we're doing and that we're giving to people and even people in the jiu-jitsu community. And so I think we should definitely do a big shout out. Like I want to give a really big thank you to Mitch Sweeney for his generosity as coming on board as a sponsor for the show and just helping us out in a way that's going to help us grow this podcast. I don't think we'll disclose yet what exactly we want to do about in terms of growing the podcast, but we're going to do some pretty cool stuff soon. And through Mitch's help, through his donation, we're going to be able to do some really remarkable things. So Mitch, man, I love you, bro. And thank you so much for your generosity. It just means so much to me. I know it means a lot to you and to Adam. So I'm just blown away by that love because the goal is to grow this podcast to help our communities.
Yeah.
And for me and you personally to serve, God better as well. And by growing this and doing things for our community, I think it's a really good thing that we're doing, man.
Yeah. Big shout out to Mitch. Thank you, Mitch. He's such a good dude.
Yeah.
Such a good dude. I was, Adam and I were actually just talking. I went to the Campbelltown markets with Adam today. I had a coffee with him and his baby boy, Connor. And
Mad invite, boys. Thanks, guys.
It was spur of the moment. He woke me up. I was crawled out of bed. But he mentioned about how Mitch was sponsoring the podcast, and I was just talking about Mitch. I'm like, the really cool story about him. I remember the first comp I did at Sydney Uni. He was there, just standing there, and I go, hey man, how you doing? He's like, hey. I go, oh, like, what time's your match? He's like, I don't have a match today. I'm like, oh, what are you doing here? He's like, I just came to support you. And at that point, like during my first comp, I think I probably said like maybe 3 or 4 things to Mitch.
Okay.
I've only met him maybe 3 or 4 times because he trains in the mornings, I train in the afternoons. And I was just like, far out.
Yeah.
That's, his sense of community, his sense of like camaraderie, that sense of team, for him to just be there, someone that he like barely knew at the time, just to come support me because he knew it was my first comp,
Says a lot about someone, man.
Man, 100%. And then that was enough for me to know the kind of character that he had and just the kind of person he was. And I think it was the Wolf Life Christmas party last year. I really was hanging with him most of the night and just having a laugh. And he's just such a good dude, man. So yeah, big shout out to Mitch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, bro.
That's really awesome.
And look, I think a lot of the stuff that you were just saying then, man, is really about what today's topic is going to be all about. And we're going to be covering relationships.
Yeah.
And
what a broad topic.
Yeah.
What a
and
broad
so
topic.
I wrote down some topics to cover. I wrote down relationships such as friendships, our partners, like intimate relationships, our personal relationships with God, and our relationships with ourselves, with our oneself. And so I thought a good way to start this, man, just because I'm not talented enough to memorize quotes off the top of my head, I wrote them down.
Yeah.
So I was going to read I'll read 2 quotes to you. I'll read one first and then we can chat about it. And then the next one, we can go into a little bit more detail.
You just do what I do. I just pretend I know and I picture it. And it's it's just paraphrased like crazy. There's not a quote anymore. Making up Bible references.
And I know, right? That's why I don't ever really quote from the Bible.
James 17:38.
Yeah, so if I butcher it, I'm sorry, but I don't. And you know what? I don't even find it that impressive if you can memorize Bible verses.
No, just means you've got good memory. Yeah.
The first one I'm going to read to you reminded me a lot about you. So I remember you telling me a story about when you met Lorna.
Yeah.
And so I know this is about friendships, but it still reminded me a lot about this. And so the first quote is from probably my favorite podcast host, his show is from Rich Roll. And he says, if you want to attract a certain caliber of person into your life, then you have to live your life in accordance with the kinds of values that would be attractive to that person. And so that reminded me a lot about you and Lorna.
Man, that's, it's crazy. When we were discussing this topic just beforehand, and you mentioned that, and the thing is, I don't listen to Rich Roll. He comes up a lot on my like Instagram stuff, but it's only from what you sent to me really that I
love him, man.
Damn, yeah, I need to listen to him more because it's
he's amazing.
I posted that Instagram reel a year and maybe 3 months ago, saying something very similar to that. And at the time, I wasn't with Lorna, and we're going to go into, and the thing is, like, I know we're talking about relationship to friends at the moment, and eventually we go into romantic relationships, relation to self, God and stuff, but they all do tie in together. Absolutely. So there's times where we're going to overlap and talk. So just for people that don't know, Lorna is my girlfriend. We just celebrated our 1 year last week.
Congrats. Man.
Yeah, thanks, man. And it's been an amazing year, best year of my life. But leading up to me meeting her, I was single for a long time. I chose to be single because I felt like I really needed to learn how to be in a relationship with myself. I felt like I was blaming myself for a lot of things that came up in past relationships, and I felt like I didn't deserve to be in a relationship, or maybe it was fear. I was scared to be in a relationship again because I was scared of hurting people. And because the thing is, I didn't understand why I couldn't commit. I didn't understand why I couldn't sustain a relationship. And I would always just self-sabotage and ruin something that was good. Yeah. And something inside me, my intuition, was telling me that you just need to be alone and learn how to be in a relationship with yourself. And I spent like a good few years just doing that and learning to really love myself, learning to really appreciate and self-validate myself. And it was a really beautiful journey. And I felt very empowered. But then it came to a point where I started to realize, hold on, I'm not doing this anymore because I need to be on this journey. I'm doing this now because I want to be in this journey. And I'm scared to then take the next step and be in a relationship. And then the moment that I realized, oh shit, I'm only being single now because I'm scared to then put everything I've learned from this period of my life into practice in a relationship now. And the moment I had that awareness, it's like it opened the floodgates. And I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to date. And I was thinking about, okay, what do I want in a partner? What are these things? Because I love my life at the moment. I don't need to have a partner. I never felt like I need to be in a relationship. I never felt like I was lonely and I needed a companion. I was really loving life. So I thought to myself, hey, if I'm going to then invest my time into a partner, they need to add to my life because my life is beautiful at the moment. I'm loving it. So I just wrote down every single quality that I wanted in a partner. And I think I wrote like 3 pages full, right? And I was not leaving anything out. I was talking about like, sexual chemistry, attraction, but also they had to be a spiritual person. They had to be driven. They had to have a purpose, but I didn't want to be that purpose. That was the main thing. I didn't want to be anyone's purpose because they weren't going to be my purpose. And we just had to have our own goals and build together, and I had all this list out. And then the thing is though, I was like, all right, in order for me to manifest this, because I'm a big believer that like attracts like, and for you to create your external world and for that to manifest, you need to then replicate that in your internal world. So I looked at all those things that I wrote down on that piece of paper and I said, okay, what do I need to work on out of those things? Sure. What am I lacking? Because if I'm expecting this from my partner, I need to be these things. Correct. And then I just circled the things that I felt like I was lacking or I still needed to work on. And then I used that time to improve that. But literally I did that and I posted on Instagram just to kind of, my thing with a lot of the self-help stuff that I post on the Soulflex page, it's usually stuff that I need to hear. That's the key. And I had a coaching client who was starting his own business. And that's something I told him. I go, the best piece of advice I can give you with starting your business is don't just post stuff for the sake of posting it because people can smell the inauthenticity.
Yeah, man.
Right? Post stuff that you need to hear because I can guarantee you someone else will listen to it and they probably need to hear it too.
it's all about when we covered about when you're posting online, you need to really ask yourself, like, what am I trying to give?
Yes, 100%.
Like, you know, like if you're posting a selfie of yourself, or if you're posting a photo of your lunch, like, what are you trying to get from that?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're just trying to get something from it. You're trying to get validation. You're fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But with the stuff that you're talking about, you know, you're really posting about stuff that you're trying to give things to people, like tools to use.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, because it's, you know, no one really wants to post that kind of stuff. Like a selfie's good. Like you feel good about yourself. Yeah. Good. That's great. But like no one wants to really post like, hey, this is my journal entry I wrote about the girl that I potentially want to manifest.
Yeah, man.
But the crazy thing is, it was a week later, Lorna just randomly added me on the Soulflex page. She started following me on story on the Soulflex page. And I didn't know she existed, right? I'd never heard of her, never knew her. She actually grew up in Camden, so she grew up pretty close. But then at that time, she'd moved down the coast, like 2 hours down the coast. And I was like, and the thing is, I don't really talk to people that just follow me randomly, right? I don't sit there and be like, hey, who are you? Like, why'd you follow me or whatever? Because I don't like to promote my business that way. But let's say you recommended someone and you told me, hey, I've got this friend, Joe, who wants personal training or breath work. And then you told me that, then I'd jump on and be like, hey, Jonny told me that you wanted personal training. But if I have no idea who they are, I just don't really reach out.
Sure.
I like to kind of attract, not chase things. So if they reach out to me, then I'll converse. But something inside me, something in my intuition was saying, hey, you need to talk to this person. And it was, I just went out off limb and just kind of messaged her. I'm like, hey, what made you follow the page? And she thought I was a bot. And I was like an automated message. So she just had this formal reply. Oh, no. And then I replied to that and she's like, oh, okay, it's an actual human talking. And then she started talking. And then we ended up just meeting up. And then we went to a park. Funny story. I'm going to bring ads into this. You remember this day, ads? Yeah. So it's just amazing how God just plants his seeds and makes things happen. And then I was like, oh, where you from? And she said, I live over at like Vincentio or wherever, Sanctuary Point something. And I was like, oh, damn. I go, it's a shame. It would have been awesome to have a coffee and get to know you a bit better. And then she was like, oh, we'll actually go down to Camden every now and then, like for appointments. So, cause I used to live over there. So we ended up just meeting in Camden. We had a coffee and she brought her dog along, Pablo, who lives with me now, my adopted son. And then, yeah, we just went for a walk along some park in Camden and we were just talking for hours and hours and hours. And it was our first time meeting each other, but we just opened up. We talked about everything. We talked about our past, our upbringing, our traumas, our relationship with God, everything. And the cool thing is we were walking past a church. Just crazy. You know that big church on the top of the hill in Camden? It's an Anglican church. And then all of a sudden it's like, Shane. I look over, Adam's at the church. Filming, because he was doing a job for Camden Council, wasn't it? Yeah. Camden Council. And he was filming different things like with people just like at cafes and walking around. And I was like, oh, hey, Ads. And then I introduced him to Lorna and stuff. And then Ads was at the park because we were just going walking around Camden. And then he saw us at the park again. And he ran over to us. He's like, hey, guys, I'm filming for Camden Council. Do you mind if I just take a photo of you guys just walking along the park? And we're like, yeah, sure. And the thing is, he captured a photo of us on our first meeting. Camden Council now has the rights to that photo.
I made him pay for it.
But yeah, it was just really cool. And like, you know, at the time, I had no idea that I would then be with Lorna in this beautiful relationship for a year. But it was just a really beautiful day. And it's just crazy how that manifested just from me, you know, doing that journal entry and just opening my heart and my mind and my awareness to the idea of a relationship and not about what I want from a partner, what I need from myself to then be able to create space for that partner to enter my life.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. Seeing as that we're talking about relationships so much, maybe I'll go to the relationship stuff first.
Okay.
Rather than the friendship stuff.
Yeah.
I was talking to Adam a lot about this because I think I'm going to get Adam's perspective in a lot of this stuff as well. And it's this quote from Brené Brown, who is also an amazing author. And it says, everyone says marriage should be 50-50. It's the biggest crock of bullshit I've ever heard. It's never 50-50, ever. And I remember reading that quote And it was actually from a YouTube clip. And then I was listening to what she was saying, and I thought this applied so well to relationships, to like intimate relationships, whether you're married or not, or like long-term partner. And she has this tool that I found so wonderful, so beautiful as well, where essentially when partners get home, they quantify to each other where they're at in terms of their energy levels, okay, where they're at in terms of like their patience, their kindness, all those kinds of things. And so one person might walk in and be like, hey, you know what, man, like like I'm at a 20 today. I'm only at a 20. And then your partner will be like, that's okay. Like, I've got you. I'll carry you. I'll bring the extra 80%, like the extra 80 points. And what I loved about that is that it's about communicating, like communication between two people in a relationship, and expressing how they're feeling in that given moment. And I find that so many relationships between husbands and wives, or, you know, boyfriend and girlfriends, or whatever it may be, there's not enough communication. And then what if both partners are at a 20? So, you know, I walk in, I'm at a 20, Rose walks in, she's at a 20. You need to make the promise of then sitting down at the table and coming up with a plan so that you don't tear each other's heads off. It's like, okay, we're both at a 20, we've got 40 together. How are we meant to get through this afternoon together? The kids are going absolute nuts. One of them is sick, the other one's in trouble. You got bills up the wall to pay. You don't have the energy. You just have to sit down and communicate. Like, I absolutely love that. And I know for you, Adam, recently, you know, Connor's been sick, or like you haven't been able to train jiu-jitsu, and I remember telling you, hey man, like when it rained, it pours. Like, what are your thoughts on like this whole, that marriage should be 50-50?
Yeah, like she is so spot on, because yeah, when you have a newborn, man, that can change hourly. Like, you can hit the day on a high and be like, feeling good today, I'll be the supportive one today, stay in bed, rest, whatever. You do an hour of parenting, and by the end of it, you're like, I'm exhausted. I'm now at like a 40. And so it's that constant checking in with your partner, right? I remember when Connor was first born, one of the big mistakes that I made with Collie was I used to think like, well, she's just, you know, delivered a baby. She's done this incredible thing for us. I'm just going to take on everything. I'm going to like do all the cleaning. I'm going to like take in whatever I can, give her as much rest as possible, blah, blah, blah. And so I was just, one, I was burning myself out, but two, I wasn't checking in on what she needed. So at so many times she would be, you know, going to do the dishes or something. I'd be like, no, sit down. I got this. I can do this. But she was getting sick of kind of just doing the same thing every day. She just wanted to do something else to feel productive. And because I wasn't checking in on her, I thought I was helping. But, you know, I was taking away from her that thing that she needed just to revitalize her a little bit, to go back to Connor feeling energized. And it's just that communication, just checking in, even if it is like an hourly thing, right? Like, you got to do what you got to do to survive and keep communicating with each other and getting through it. It's been a wild year, man. Like 14 and a half months it is now. And like, we're still every day of just learning how to be parents together. But that's the key thing, right? Like, for a while there, we were two individuals trying to just be parents on our own. But I think really over the last 6 months, we've really just made sure we've kept that communication up, and we're doing it together now. Like, we're learning to be parents together as opposed to two people going on their own parenting journey with their kids. Yeah.
No, man, dude, spot on. And even for me, like in my household, like in the last 2 years, so, you know, Rose has been studying, doing her master's. She's going to be an occupational therapist. She's already like a biologist. She's also got a degree in marketing. But so it's been up to me, obviously, then to be the main breadwinner, to bring in the money, you know, to be able to pay for bills. But on the flip side, those last 2 years, you know, I went through some pretty hard times with my anxiety and with my OCD. And then I honestly think at times I was maybe bringing in a 5 in terms of emotional support, a 10. And I was just always drained, exhausted, incredibly down, not in a good mood. And it was up to Rose to carry that load, you know, to really be like, that's okay. Like, I've got you. And they act as like your anchor in support. But I love this from Brené Brown, but I don't think any of this works if there is no communication. Like, if you are not communicating how you are feeling, what you're going through, and then having the trust or faith in your partner to do so, it doesn't work. And so what are your thoughts on this, man? Like, what are your thoughts on this whole 50-50?
I think the key thing there is communication. And that's something I wrote on my list of what I expected and demanded in a partner. And when I went through that list, I'm thinking, oh, okay, what do I need to work on? Communication. And the thing is, for me at that time, communication was speaking, but communication is just as much listening as it is speaking.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, Lorna, like, she's younger than I am. And like, when we hang out, we're just so immature. We're just laughing and roasting each other and just roasting the world and just having the best time. But then when we have deep and meaningfuls, she's got so much wisdom. And I can really, like, you know that saying, behind every powerful man is a powerful woman?
Yeah.
Like, I see that, and like, we just play our roles really well. And her feminine energy, and I'm going to go and talk about masculine and feminine energy in a sec, but like, her feminine energy just puts me more in my masculine. And when I'm more in my masculine, it allows her to be more in her feminine, right? But I'll go into detail about that in a sec. But there was one time where, you know, and I think there was one PT session, Adam, that you and I were talking about this. And like, Lauren and I had this disagreement about something, and we couldn't see eye to eye with it, right? But then I just started switching back to my old habits, and I was just really stubborn with it. And I was getting frustrated because she couldn't see my point of view. And there was two things that she kind of opened my eyes up and opened my eyes up to with relationships. Is one thing she said to me was like, hey, just remember, it's not you versus me, it's us versus the problem. And as soon as she said that, the stormy waters just settled and calmed. And I was like, well, okay. And then I just took a minute, just meditated for a bit. She went to the room, and then we came back and we talked. And then we talked about males and females, right? It's almost like we're two different species that speak two different languages, right? And I know like people joke about it all the time, it's like pub talk, like, you know, like, why can't women be more direct and stuff? But that's because they're not. They're not. Like, for us, right, when we talk about masculine and feminine, masculines are very just rational. We just want to get from point A to point B. We see things very black and white. But women see a whole spectrum of colors in between, and they feel with emotions. So I know whenever there's a problem, whether it's with my romantic partner or whether it's a friend or with a family member, I'm like, hey, this is the problem. This is the solution. How do we get there?
Yeah.
And I will stay up. I don't care how long it takes for us to sit there and figure it out. But sometimes the woman needs to go away and just feel and think, because what they do is, like, we think in a linear fashion and they think in a circular fashion. So they bring in all these interconnections, all these emotions, all these adverse effects of the problem. And then they need to kind of feel it and then bring it in and find the solution. And then once they've done that, then you communicate and find a resolution.
Yeah.
And that really helped me understand how to communicate with her, right? And not just communicate what I needed to say, but listen and understand how she needs to communicate. And that was a big thing. And I think that's where the whole 50-50 thing doesn't apply. I think it's just like, it's 100 and 100. You guys got to come in to it, understanding yourself. And if you don't understand yourself, then you can't communicate to your partner. So you have to kind of understand how to have that relationship to self, which we'll kind of get into, in order to have a strong, powerful relationship with your partner. So as you're building that relationship with your partner, you also need to be having another relationship with yourself and working on that as well. Because then, you know, what are you communicating then if you don't know what you're feeling and what you're thinking? So you have to really know yourself and get to know yourself and learn to know yourself so that you can then communicate in an authentic way with your partner, and vice versa as well. And, you know, the thing with, are you familiar with like masculine and feminine energy?
Not so much.
So basically, it's nothing to do with gender. It's nothing to do with actual gender or anything like that. Every single person, whether you're male or female, has masculine and feminine energy, and we need both, right? It's unhealthy if the polarity is very imbalanced, right? And masculine and feminine energy is linked to yin and yang. You know the symbol with the black and the white and the dots? Yeah. So that pretty much represents masculine and feminine energy, the polarity, right? Now, basically, they say your masculine energy sits on the right side of the body, right? And the feminine energy sits on the left side of the body. So it's linked to the right and left hemisphere of the brain as well. And the right, it's got little points here, right? So your feminine energy is all about that free flowing, that go with the flow, very like emotion driven, very nurturing, vulnerable, very subtle. It's that creative, that ability to stay present and just feel, right? Whereas the masculine energy, and again, whether you're male or female, you have both, is about taking action. It's about rationalizing. It's knowledge-based. It's about problem solving. It's direct. It's about structure. It's goal-orientated, and it's about protection, okay? And even like with you and I, how we've come into this podcast, you're always the person that has the structure, the plan, and I'm very like the feminine energy, just kind of free flowing and just going with the flow with what you structured, you know what I mean? Which is a really good kind of, I guess, relationship for the podcast. And in order to enhance that dynamic of that masculine and feminine with your partner, you as an individual and your partner as an individual has to understand that masculine feminine dynamic within yourself. And the way I look at it is your own masculine and feminine energy is like the perfect parents. When the feminine is, say, too free flowing, because it's not good to be too free flowing and too, I guess, go with the flow, because that can sometimes lead to being too lackadaisical, where you have no drive and no ambition. Sure. You know, right? Like, you know, if you're sitting on the couch, just kind of like watching TV, not thinking about anything, right? You also need to have goals in life. So that's where the masculine steps up. But then the masculine energy, and the thing is, a lot of people in today's society, whether you're male or female, are heavy on the masculine side. Yeah. Heavy in the masculine energy. And the thing is, if you think about pretty much everyone in society, everyone is like, you know, they're working. When they're not working, they're going home, they're running a family, they're doing chores. And if I could sum up what masculine energy and feminine energy is in like a phrase, masculine energy is a state of doing. Feminine energy is a state of being, right? And the thing is, the majority of people in today's society is constantly in a state of doing. We're always doing, and we're not just being, right? And the problem is with that dynamic is that, and I'm not saying that, you know, women shouldn't be working. It's great. If a woman wants to be at home and be a housewife and look after the home, that's beautiful. That's great. If a woman wants to go pursue her dreams and have a career and ambition, that's beautiful. That's great. As long as it's linked to their authentic purpose, they're not doing it for anyone else. Correct. Yeah. Right? I agree. If they're just following their purpose and their intuition, whatever that looks like, that's personal to them and that's beautiful. But the thing is, a lot of us, male and female, are in our masculine energy. And then when we come home, we don't know how to revert back to our feminine, right? And even men, like, you know, when they're on work, they're like, say, running a business or doing stuff. When they come home, they just don't have any drive. And I hear a lot of times, like with couples, the woman's always like, oh, like, you know, my husband didn't take me on dates. He doesn't like do anything. He doesn't make plans. And that's because he's just way too much in his feminine energy. But that's because a lot of the females are also in their masculine energy. So that polarity and that dynamic is just so blurred that we don't know how to kind of revert, because we rely on each other. Yeah. But if we understand that dynamic within ourselves and we know when to kind of like create that balance, you picture those old school scales and just know when to push and pull with your masculine and feminine, then we can then create that healthy balance with other relationships in our lives.
Yeah. I love that, man. That's very interesting too.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. Yeah. I was telling you before as well. So this week I was chatting to Rose because I'm getting ready to go to Las Vegas, you know, for the World Championships. And I was getting my gi printed. And on the front of the gi, it's all about like my family. So I've got like, Izzy once wrote, "We are happy." like in this really cute way on a notepad. So I got that printed and it's getting put on the front of the gi.
Yeah.
Conan's going through this like real artistic phase where he wants to just draw anything and everything. So he just draws random shapes and numbers. It looks really cool. So then I'm getting a patch put on here of that. And then the bottom near my belt, there's going to be a quote from the book, The Alchemist. Because when I read that book, I could just picture myself so much in that book, but me finding Rose, like my wife.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, it just reminded me so much of my wife and myself and our relationship and our love for each other. And so I'm getting a quote printed at the bottom from that book.
What's the quote?
I don't have it.
Oh, that's all. Yeah.
I don't have it. Essentially pretty much that the universe has conspired through eternity for me to be with her.
Yeah, beautiful.
And I love that, you know.
Yeah.
And the reason why I like that is just because I feel that God has conspired, you know, throughout eternity for me to share this moment, to share this world with Rose.
Yeah.
And so it just means so much to me. And then on the back, I've got the crucifix of Jesus. And on the bottom, I've got Jesus' name written in Aramaic. And I sent that to my wife. I go, hey, design's done. And so my wife knows me so well, man. And I feel it's because we are excellent communicators. And I feel Rose is really balanced in her masculine energy and in her feminine energy, where I'm off kilted. You know, I can be way too masculine sometimes and I don't tap into my feminine energy enough. And
do you find then when you need to be in your feminine, you just go full into your feminine energy mode where you just switch off?
Yeah, man. Yeah. And it's like, I feel at times I'm just way I'm too sensitive to everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you really feel those dips, you know?
Yeah. I used to be like that. That's what made me kind of research and learn this because I was exactly like that as well.
Yeah. And so I sent it to her like all excited and, you know, she liked it, loved it. And then she gave me a call. She goes, I thought I'd give you a call rather than messaging you to ask you about your gi. And straight away in my head, I'm like, here we go. Like she's going to have a problem with it or something. But it was such a beautiful conversation because she knew to call me because she knew that if she messaged me, I would have gotten upset. If she was to ask me this question, because she said to me, I think the gi looks amazing. It looks beautiful, this and that. She goes, but are you meant to be putting the crucifix like on clothing? Are you meant to put Jesus' name on clothing? And she goes, I just wanted to call you to ask you that because I didn't want you to get a message and then look into it and then get offended. I'm like, man, she knows me so well. Because if she'd sent me that, I probably would have gotten really upset. And so that's that whole communicating.
Yeah.
And then, but at the same time, what I loved about it was it gave me an opportunity to explain to her all these things that I'd been holding in my heart for a couple of weeks. And how for the longest time I'd been thinking about this design for my gi because I'm going to Worlds. And it gave me an opportunity to explain to her why it was so important for me to have the crucifix on my back and Jesus' name on the bottom as well. And it allowed me to open up to her, for her to understand. And I was getting like really emotional when I was talking to her about this. It was really important for her to understand my perspective. And I understood her perspective. And I'm like, look, babe, I'm not getting this printed on the back as some kind of flex. It's that I feel now it would be disingenuous for me to put on anything on my back that isn't my belief in Christianity. Because I no longer feel like I'm stepping on that mat to represent wolf life or to represent my countries, which are Chile and Australia. Because I'm literally representing, my Lord and Savior. That's who I'm representing. And I was saying to her that by having the crucifix on my back, it now really reminds me not to make decisions based off my ego. Because before I would compete, and if it meant that my arm's going to get broken or my leg's going to get snapped, so be it. I don't care. Anything for the win. But I'm no longer like that anymore. And so for me, having the crucifix on the back, it actually kills my ego. It kills that little file manager that tries to keep you safe. And I also told her that, we're touching on this before that, obviously because we do this podcast now and it's about Christianity and it touches on Christian themes and beliefs. that a lot of people messaged me about like the Olympics, about like the Last Supper, and about Johnny, what were your thoughts about the opening ceremony and the, people making a mockery of the Last Supper. And like I was explaining to Rose, like I hadn't like really said anything to her about that, or I hadn't said anything to really anyone about that. I'd kind of like been meditating on that idea. I mean, like on what happened, and that for me, I was saddened by it. I wasn't offended by it. I've got family members, who are gay, and I don't have an issue with anyone, no matter your sexuality or your preference or anything like that. I was just like saddened that a lot of reactions were about hate, and how, for me, everything that I'd been reading in the Bible and learning, it's all about turning your other cheek now. And so I needed to like express to Rose that me wearing that crucifix on my back now is that I don't want to shy away from my beliefs, but I don't want to rub it in people's faces in terms of a high moral position or virtual signaling position. It's more that I want people to then engage with me in jiu-jitsu while I have that on my back. And they're like, that is the most loving person I've ever competed with, or that's one of the most loving, kind people I've ever trained with, or that person is like the best coach I could possibly ever have. And for them to see how much this all means to me, how much my belief means to me. And so for my wife to actually give me the opportunity by giving me a phone call and calling me and going, hey babe, like I want to tap into your mindset a little bit. I want to know like why you want to do that. And by her giving me that opportunity and for me explaining it, I fell even more in love with her. I fall even more in love with her every day. But just by me communicating that to her, it just meant so much to me.
Yeah.
And so that's why like communication is key, and the masculine and feminine energies, like you're so spot on all those things. And yeah, I was about to just go on this rage, and by her giving me the chance to communicate that to her, it was really beautiful.
I think just even a couple of points from there, man. Like there's so much to unpack just from what you said just then. Firstly, big shout out to Rose, because that's what you want in a partner or a friend.
Yeah.
Right? You want someone that, one, will give you constructive feedback and constructive criticism that will make you reflect and think about things, right? It's so much easier to avoid confrontation.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why, like, you might see me refer to my friends like as my tribe. You're part of my tribe. Adam's part of my tribe. Wade, Albert, Seb, Michael, all those, like, it's a tribe, right? And then I have friends who I love and adore, right? Then I have acquaintances.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why there's people in my tribe, right? I didn't mention everyone's name. I have a big tribe, and they're growing because I'm starting to, the more I understand myself, the more I understand who I want in my tribe. You know what I mean? And there's a difference between friends and your tribe, or a friendship group and your tribe. And I'm going to quote a Bible reference, Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend.
Yeah.
Okay? How do you sharpen a knife, right? You grind it or strike it against another hard metal.
Yeah.
Right? And what that does is that takes away any kind of impurities from the knife so that it restores into its proper form and it can be used for its proper purpose again, right? And when you think about friendships, right, and true friends, what they do is they're not afraid to have those hard conversations with you. They're not afraid to have those difficult but loving confrontations.
Yeah.
To help smooth out any impurities, any, I guess, cobwebs in your mind or anything like that, so that you can then keep going on to your purpose or God's purpose for you.
Yeah.
Right? Iron sharpens iron. And when I think about my tribe, the people around me, they're the people who can question me, pull me up, but in a loving way. And I know that they're not doing it to criticize me or to put me down or bring me down. They're doing it out of pure love, right? To make sure that I'm okay, to make sure that I am moving in my authentic purpose. And that's why God planted them in my life. And I have no doubt about that, including my own dog. I adopted my dog 3 months before my accident, the car accident that I was talking about in the last episode. And I had no idea this accident was going to happen. But man, I didn't have Lorna at the time. I had my beautiful friend, my friends and my tribe around me. But I remember having my dog Luna with me gave me so much comfort. And I'm like, man, God just delivered to you 3 months before this, to come into my life. But when I read that Bible passage, I automatically started thinking about my friend Wade, right? Big shout out to Wade. He's always listening to the podcast the day it comes out. So I love you, brother. He's someone that whenever I talk to him about spirituality, he'll always just sit there and listen. And the thing is, when I first met him, if you've met Wade before, you've seen him, he looks like a lumberjack. You wouldn't think that he's like a really deep person just from the outside looking in, but he's actually a lot more spiritual than he gives himself credit for. Okay. And he's a lot more, has more of an awareness than he realizes. And he said some things to me that he probably didn't realize how much of an impact it would have on me, but it was the catalyst for a lot of pivotal changes in my life. And one of those things was when I was living in the city and I was just going around drinking and sleeping with different women every week and just seeking validation from everyone and living a lifestyle that I thought would impress other people. And we were talking about, he was like, oh, do you think you'd ever settle down? I'm like, nah, I'm not going to settle down. This is my life. And I actually meant that at the time. I wasn't just saying that, but that came from a place where I just had no self-worth, no self-love. I didn't trust myself. And I genuinely believed that I was just happy being single and living this life forever. And I was happy being alone, again, in that victim mentality and living in my spiral. And I just said, nah, man, I don't do relationships. I'm not good at it. And then he said to me, he pulled me up on it and he goes, man, you're the one who always tells me, never say you're not good at stuff because you're just going to label yourself and then become that thing. That's true. When you say I'm not a morning person, I guarantee you're not going to be a morning person. Correct. You know what I mean? If you say, hey, I'm not good with money, I guarantee you're not going to be good with money. You know what I mean? But you are what you say. And then he pulled me up on that. And I was like, oh, fuck, that's a bit of hypocrisy. I'm like, yeah, you're right, man. And that was it. We were just went on with the day. And it shifted the way I looked at relationships and what I was doing with my life, and even after the car accident and he came and visited me after I got released from the holding cell and he was just checking on me and stuff. And then he said to me, he goes, hey man, it's crazy. If all this happened to you 2 years ago, you would have handled it so differently. And I was like, shit, you're right. I didn't think of that. And that made me realize that God gave me this obstacle at the right time. If he was trying to punish me, he would have given it to me 3 or 4 years ago. But he's trying to challenge me to help me prosper and evolve and grow closer to him. So he gave it to me now. Because I guarantee you, if it happened 3 years prior, I would have just written myself off and just drank and done drugs and just, let myself fall deeper into a spiral and been a victim. But he gave it to me at a point in my life when my faith was growing. And he was like, hey, take this obstacle and grow closer to me. And Wade said that. And that was a lot of people were there for me throughout that time that I'm so grateful for. And a lot of people said some really important things that shifted me closer to God at that time. And some people that, I'd only just met or people that in my whole life, but it was just, I started to kind of just see things play out like a movie. I could see what God was doing. And I was like, he planted all these people in my life to kind of just help me, just like he planted me in people's lives to help them. And it's just this entanglement in life that we're all here to just help and serve each other and be in each other's lives to help each other prosper and heal. And yeah, so you said a few things to me that really kind of helped me shift in my life. And, you know, the word spiritual person is very tokenistic.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think that every single person on this planet is a spiritual person. But to be a spiritual person, you don't have to have long hair and feathers and, you know, floppy coat.
That's it.
And walk around with sage. You know what I mean? Like, spirituality is so personal to you. And the thing is, if you have a soul in your body, you're a spiritual person.
I love that, man. And I think it's a good segue into this. And it's, again, it's from one of my favorite authors. And he actually wrote this great article on this platform called Medium. So it's a quote by Brad Stulberg. And it says, "The people with whom you surround yourself have an enormous impact on your life. In many ways, they shape it." And he goes on in this article to talk about Aristotle. And this was written, I think, like 2,000 years ago. And it pretty much explains that there are three different kinds of friendships. Okay, the first one being friends based on like vitality. So one or both parties gain something. So I guess in the modern era, think about networking. Okay, then you've got friendship based on pleasure. So people who you have a good time with, you know, people that you have a good time with, that you go out with, that you drink coffee with, that you go to the clubs. Okay, so pleasure. And then you have friendship based on virtue, which is both individuals share the same values. Okay. And so it goes to say that, yeah, what one friend useful or pleasurable is not permanent, but is always changing. Thus, when the person for the friendship is done away, the friendship is dissolved. So essentially saying you might have a friendship based on networking, on vitality, in terms of like, what can I gain from this? As soon as they've gained what they've wanted or you've gained what you've wanted, that friendship is over.
Yeah.
With the friendships based on pleasure, you know, you grow out of clubbing, you grow out of particular sports, you grow out of particular hobbies and interests. And so when that's not there anymore, that pleasure isn't there anymore, the friendship dissolves. But the one that continues is that one based on virtue, so based on values. So perfect friendship is a friendship of who are alike in values, for these wish well to each other and thus are good in themselves. And that's what I feel like I have with yourself and with Adam. That's what I feel I have with Tibby. That's what I feel like I have with my brother. That's what I feel like I have with Michael and Albert. You know, these are true friendships based on values. So we have different interests, we have different hobbies, we have similar interests, similar hobbies. But what makes our friendships so special is that we share the same values. And, you know, this is something that, you know, I've been speaking to Timmy a lot about recently, is that, you know, kind of like you were mentioning before, you have your tribe, and I feel like I have my tribe, and my tribes are my friends that I share my values with. And I didn't think at the age of 39 I would meet, you know, such wonderful, loving people like yourself and Adam. I never thought I'd make new friends like this. And then when I see how happy you guys are for me, or you guys are always checking in on me, it's so refreshing. It's so beautiful. And I really see the difference with that, because, yeah, you just don't think at 39 you'd make new friends, and such profound, beautiful friendships where we support each other so much, where we are so genuinely happy for each other, where we so genuinely look out for each other. And so I guess I'll turn this to you, Ads. When I was going through the different types of friendships, like, do you feel, you know, now being in your mid-30s, do you find that as well, like, the friendships based on virtue is what you probably, I think, see as the most important quality in a friend?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like it comes back to being a parent now, kind of thing. I don't have the time that I used to have to like go out and see friends all the time, and I really have to pick and choose. And yeah, it's the same sort of thing as you. Like when I started training at Wolf Life, I never ever imagined that it would take the course that it has now, where I have some of the best mates in my life here, ones that I openly call my brothers. I mean, Shane gets called Uncle Shane to Connor, and Albert's Tito Albert. And it's just beautiful, man. Like, and it's just so much more important because I know that if I'm having a shit day and I'm feeling like a shit dad or a shit husband or a shit business owner, like all of us are those things. Like when Shane was just saying the list of people in his life, like our tribe, like we're all business owners, we're all dads. Like there's something, bro. I saw you with Connor this morning. You're a dad whether you like it or not. The way you helped me, I feel like, yeah, you're wise beyond your years. But yeah, like all I have to do is flick a message to our chat and say like, guys, I'm having a rough day. I've had a rough week. I feel like I'm being, crap dad today, or I've been whatever. And I get, message after message from all of you guys giving me all your points of advice. It's just so nice to have and such a great support. And yeah, it's second to none. It's amazing.
I love that, man. And something I found as well about friendship based on virtue was that, like, I admire all of you guys. Like, I look up to you guys so much. And it's almost like you guys are mentors to me as well. I know I'm a lot older than you guys, but I feel like, I mentioned back in the day when I didn't know who you were and reading your social media posts, it was like, man, he's got his fucking head on really good. Like, this content is superb. This is how a coach and a trainer should be. And I wasn't envious of it, but I admired it so much. And then even with yourself, ads like how you carry yourself with Collie and how you carry yourself with Connor and how committed you are to your family, to your work, I was just like, I love that so much. And I would always I try to give you advice as a dad where I feel like I made a lot of mistakes in my early years as a parent, trying to build my business for myself. And, I give you that advice of like, hey man, like you need to be there for your family first. And then watching you take that advice and, building something from it is just so remarkable. And that's what I admire so much.
But, and it's the same thing, right? Like I'm only investing so much because I love what I do. I love photography, video, everything. Like it is my passion, and it's turned into a business. And it is one of the hard parts about being a father now is that disparity between wanting to be really successful in what I do and loving what I do and wanting to do it every day. But then there's like the days where Connor's sick and, mum and dad can't look after him or something. And I have to not get all the crazy visual ideas that are in my head down for my clients and everything on that day. I have to just be a dad. But it is those lessons that you have to learn the hard way that then drive my thoughts in all that. Because then on those days, I think, I'm only going to get this chance once. And like, I know you spoke about, I get the Jonny now that has like learned all those hard lessons, right?
Yeah, man.
And I can see how much it affects you and the sort of, I don't want to say that you have regret because I'd be speaking for you, but I can see that, yeah, like you do have, you're hard on yourself for that time. And yeah, though it hits me so much harder than when you tell me like, make the most of it and family comes first, because I know that is, the values that you have learned the hard way. And so, yeah, dude, every time I have a day where I'm like, God, I just want to do my thing today. He's been sick all week. I don't know if I can like parents again today. I think about it and I'm like, you know what? This is where I need to invest my time because I'll regret this if I don't. And the business is always going to be there, but Connor's growing every day and I know I'll regret it.
I always tell Adam and I tell like Timmy as well, like, fuck, I wish I had like a mentor when I was younger. Like, I wish I had that friend to tell me to be like, hey man, like you're really blowing it right now. Like you are spending way too much time at work. I'd be working from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night every fucking day, Monday to Friday. Saturdays, 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. And just on this mission of self-insecurity, man, of like, I need to build an empire, and just flex everything.
Yeah.
And I wish I had that friend to be like, hey man, like, you know that you're never home? Like, hey man, you know you're not spending much time with your children? Hey man, you know that you're always dropping your kids off at your mom's house? And like, reflecting on that now, it's fucking painful, man. It is so painful for me, to be honest, bro.
You know, what's funny with the word like regret though, is that it's hard to regret things in life when you learn from them. And if you didn't experience all that, you wouldn't be the person you are today.
I agree.
And the thing is, if you did have that mentor, say 5-10 years ago, would you have listened the way that you listen the way you now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, cause I know I wouldn't have. If I had like mentors telling me stuff, I would have got really back against the wall, really defiant.
Yeah.
And really like, you know, like, fuck you, who are you to tell me what to do? You know, because that was my attitude back then.
Yeah.
And communication, you know, I never like would listen and absorb the way that I do now. So I know that God placed certain people in my life at the right time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he took people away from my life at the right time. And one of the hardest things for human beings to accept is that some people aren't meant to be in our life forever. As humans, we just get so attached, right? And the thing is, I believe in soul contracts, right? Like I have this weird thing, and I may be wrong or right, and I'll never know until I'm out of this life, but I just have this like intuitive feeling that you and I met before we manifested into this earth. Our souls met and we said, hey, when we're in our 30s, we're going to meet at jiu-jitsu. I'm like, what the fuck's jiu-jitsu? I think that the Gracious doing. But
Squid joke.
it's not invented yet. It's not been invented yet. But and we're like, hey, but you know, we're not going to know each other until that point.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to do a bit of self-work. I have to do a bit of self-work. And then that's when God's going to put us together. Same with me and Lorna. Same with you and me, Ads. And not just even the people that are in our lives for a long time, right? I won't go into full detail about it because this is going to be a whole episode about this, but even like my relationship with my dad.
Yeah.
I might as well touch on it a little bit since it's about relationships. You know, if I asked you like who's the most pivotal person, what's the most pivotal relationship in your life apart from God? If someone asked me that, I would say it's my dad. And that would surprise a lot of people, right? But my relationship with my father has had the biggest influence on my life.
Yeah.
Right? And I spent a lot of my life hating him. And look, I'll touch on it, and I'm going to be really open with our listeners. This is very hard for me to talk about. I may or may not get emotional, but like you guys know the story. And I'm not going to say this so listeners be like, oh, I feel sorry for Shane, or Shane's dad's a really bad person, because I don't want them to think that, because he's actually not a bad person. I don't think there's good and bad people in the world. I think there's people that are lost and ignore God's calling sometimes. But like, obviously I grew up in a quite an abusive household where my father would beat us and beat my mum. And it was to the point where I was, I actually wasn't going to talk about this today, but scrap the notes. But I wasn't there. But he, I remember from like a young age, so like, you know, before I could even walk and crawl, I would see my dad beating my mum. And my mum would tell me the story like it was a really cute story, like, oh, this is how much you loved me. Like, you'd be in nappies and like, you know, you'd crawl in front of me to protect me. And she was telling me the story in the sense that like, oh, that's how much I loved her, which is nice, but no, like, you know, 2-year-old, 3-year-old should witness that and have to even have the intuition to do that.
Yeah.
And from a young age, I felt so much hate and rage, like white hot rage, at an age where I shouldn't have known what that felt like.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have known that emotion. And and I carried that hate for a long, long time. And I would constantly go through cycles where I'd feel guilted into forgiving him. But I wasn't forgiving him for me. I was forgiving him, say, for my mum, or because my aunties and uncles were saying, oh, he's your father, and I would come back and forgive him. But then those cycles would repeat, and then I would go through that. And as a child, I would go into my room and I would just feel rage. And I used to just draw, and that would kind of help me kind of like compute the rage at the time. And anyway, I thought it was normal for him to beat us up, but then something didn't feel right about watching him beat my mum up. There was something that didn't feel right. And the whole time I thought my cousins and stuff knew, and I thought it was normal. I thought it was happening to them. And then just in the recent years, I'd be talking to my cousins about it, and they'd be like, man, I had no idea that was happening. And as I got older, it just felt a lot easier to cut him out of my life. But the thing is, in order to cut someone out of your life, you have to hold on to negative emotions.
Yeah.
Right? In order to kind of set those kind of boundaries and not forgive someone, you have to hold on to some kind of hate or anger to keep that lack of forgiveness up. So if I saw him, I'd have to remind myself of how much I hated him or how much I despised him in order to keep that lack of forgiveness up. And the unhealthy thing about that is that gets stored in your system.
Yeah.
Right? And it gets stored in your energy. And it starts to project and manifest in different ways. And I was seeing it like, I grew up like just not wanting anything to do with him. I didn't want any validation from him. I didn't want any approval of him. I just wanted nothing to do. I just wanted to keep right away. But then I was seeking that validation from other people, from women, from friends. I wanted to be the life of the party. I wanted to be the person that was most wanted by everyone. And I was starting to see that. And I remember when my ex-wife and I, when we were sort of breaking up, she said something to me. She goes, you hate your dad so much, but you're more like him than you think. And I thought at the time that she was saying that to hurt me because she was upset. But I thank her now, because that actually opened my eyes up. Because even though I wasn't projecting my fear and insecurity in the same way he was doing, like beating his wife and kids, I was still projecting it in other ways. And I was actually a lot similar to him. My shadows were a lot similar to his shadows than I thought and realized. And it was in my early 20s or mid 20s when I realized that. And I realized, I'm like, man, I was always wondering why I was born into this family. I didn't understand why God gave me him as a father, because it just didn't make sense. I'd see my mates and they were like chummy with their dad that had I could probably count in two hands how many conversations I've had with my dad my whole life. And I'd always see other people with their parents and their fathers, and I'm like, man, I don't have that. My friends have these dads that are teaching them how to grow up to be good men, but I don't have that. And then as I got older and I started to kind of like see relationships as soul contracts, agreements that we made beforehand, something that helped me kind of work towards forgiving my father was understanding that he played his role exactly how he was meant to. He was meant to be the bad guy in my story. And the thing is, I needed to hate him for a long period of time in order to be so repelled that I wanted to be nothing like him. And that made me become who I am today, because I was thinking, what can I do to avoid becoming like him? I just got to do what he's not doing. Right? And he's someone who would not do any introspection. He would not turn inward. He would not think about his actions. He would not show any remorse. He would not take any accountability. He was very big on ego and validation. You'd always see him with the gold rings and the fancy cars. And that's how he was getting that validation. And that's how he was, I guess that's where his ideals and his morals were. And when I thought about it, I was big on branded clothes back then. I was chasing that same thing as well. And I was like, okay, I need to make changes in my life. And in a way, that relationship with him was the catalyst for me to shift the other way. And I was like, instead of living this external life, I need to focus on my internal life, my internal world. And that's what helped me go onto this journey of self-discovery. And in a way, he did parent me. He did teach me things, but just in a very unorthodox and unconventional way. And you actually, I had a good conversation with you over coffee one time, and you were talking to me about like forgiveness, because I was saying, I just hold so much anger and it just comes out. Like, I just be thinking and I just get so angry because I'm just holding on to things from like 35 years. And you said to me, it's like, you can forgive someone and still not agree with their actions. Like, you can still try to forgive them, but not necessarily agree with them. Yeah. And like if I stole $100 from your wallet right now, and you could be like, man, Shane's such a prick, I can't stand him, I can't believe you did that. But it wouldn't affect me because I'd go off and spend your $100. It's just affecting you.
Correct.
And that's the way I look at it. Like, me holding on to that anger and rage is just hurting myself. It's not affecting him. I could stay angry the rest of my life, but it might not change him. Correct. Do you know what I mean? But all I can do is change me. And I'm a really big believer in that we have this universe inside us, right? Outside of us, there's this whole universe. There's cars on the road, there's trees, there's stars, moon, sun, but inside of us, there's a whole universe as well. And that internal universe is a mirror and a projection to the outside universe, right? Everything outside of us is out of our control. I can't control what you say to me, or what Adam thinks of me, or the traffic tomorrow, or the weather this week. I'm in no control of that, but I'm in control of everything in my internal universe. And that was what helped me work towards that forgiveness. But then when I look at that relationship, I'm like, what if my soul and my dad's soul made an agreement when my dad was like, hey, I'm going to be in your life for a long time, and I'm going to be your biggest challenge. And you're going to hate me for a long time, but it's going to help shape you and shift you towards God in the future. And and what if he did just serve his purpose in my life, you know what I mean? And that helps me. And whether I'm right or wrong, at least it kind of gives me a bit of peace thinking that way. So
how does your relationship with God like work in this? Like, because you've told me so much about the Bible, you've told me so much about God and about Jesus. And we understand that, like I wrote here, Jesus, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. So learning about Jesus and his teachings, his values, is an important part of building a relationship with God. And if we know one of the most important teachings of Jesus is about love, kindness, and forgiveness, how does that impact your relationship? Not your relationship, sorry, the conundrum you have with your Father of forgiveness. If, say for an example, the Bible is telling you, or not the Bible, sorry, but the person that you believe in, Jesus is telling you that you have to forgive people. How does that play a role in what you do?
I think it comes down to, and we quote this a lot. We talk about how when Moses was talking about God's commandments, and he brought up the eye for an eye, right? I lived a lot of my life with that eye for an eye, but then thousands of years later, when Jesus emerged, he was saying, I know Moses said eye for an eye, but that's incorrect. It's you turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
And I used to hear that phrase when I was young all the time. And I would know what it meant when I was young, but I didn't understand how to put it into practice. And then when I started reading the Bible with the intention to build a relationship with Christ, to understand him, I started to see how he applied that.
Yeah.
Because, we talk about mentors, right? And I always tell people the greatest mentor, the greatest shaman, the greatest teacher you'll ever have is you, right? That relationship with yourself and understanding yourself, understanding why you think a certain way, understanding why you act a certain way, understanding why you feel a certain way. you need to understand what's going on in your internal universe, what's going on in your system for you to then develop that relationship with God, right? They go hand in hand. God wants you to go on a journey of self-discovery to bring you closer to him.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you do go into that internal universe and you develop that relationship with yourself, what you're doing is you're taking out all the noise, all the outside layers. You're peeling the onion down to its core. And then it's just you. And that's when you're the closest to God because you don't have anything else around you, right? And let's say, I'm going to bring up Wade again, right? Obviously, he's one of my best friends, but you don't know him that well. If you wanted to build a relationship with him, what would you do?
I'd have to get to know him.
And what would that entail? What would you do? Would you be...
I'd have to get in communication with him.
Yeah. And Ads, when you were first met Collie, right? And think about before you were dating or your first date, I want you to think about how did you allow that relationship to blossom? What would you have to do in the first date? Like, what would that look like?
It's actually hard with Colin because we were friends for a long time.
Okay, even when you first met her as a friend, like, because you still have a relationship with friends, right? How did that relationship develop? Like, what would you have to do to then become someone's friend? To get to know them?
But it's like now, being in a relationship with her, I had to communicate with her.
Ask questions.
Get to know her. She found out that I was a massive geek one day because I came back from Supernova, the comic convention, and she ripped on me, but it built that relationship together.
Good. So she was getting to know things about you, like what you liked, hobbies, right? Yeah. Things like that. You think about when you first met Rose, like, you're getting to know, you might ask, hey, what kind of music do you like? You're asking questions. And in order to build a relationship with yourself or a relationship with God, you have to treat it just like you would having a first date with someone or getting to know a friend, right? A lot of people that are listening to this might not know how to have a relationship with God. And I get that question a lot. How do you have a relationship with God? It's no different to having a relationship with anyone else. Ask questions, but then communicate and listen as well, right? Seek the answers, right? So that's why I started reading the Bible again. I was wanting to build a relationship with God. It's like having a first date. Like saying, hey, I don't know you that well. I've praised you my whole life. I've spoken your name your whole life, but I don't know you.
Yeah.
And I've opened my heart to let you get to know me. So I started reading about Christ so that I could answer my questions about him. And that allowed me to, I guess, then allowed him to be a mentor to me through his life, right? Just like you said, like, you saw me, I guess, which I'm really flattered by, and I see you the same way, just like I see Ads as well. We see each other as mentors, not because we stand in a podium and preach. We look up to each other because of the way we live our lives through our actions. Right. And that's what's so powerful when you read the New Testament and you look at the way Jesus approached things. And, there was no man mocked more. Like we talked about the Olympics and stuff. There's no man mocked more and ridiculed more and even physically, emotionally, mentally tortured more than Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And this isn't a fictional book. You could go through every religion that exists. They talk about Christ. Muslims acknowledge him. Buddhists, Hindus acknowledge that he existed, right? So this isn't fiction, this is facts. There was a man named Jesus Christ that existed who lived this life and was crucified. Whether you believe he's the Son of God or not, there's enough evidence and facts to say, hey, he existed, right?
Agree.
Yeah, but that's basically, I guess I don't know, it's a long-winded way to kind of answer that question. I don't even know if I answered it, but...
No, you did. No, I've always just wondered that, man, because like when you told me the story about your father, it's heartbreaking. It's hard to hear and it's sad and, being your friend, you feel it, man. You feel those words and you helped me a lot through it, man, just even by sharing your own experiences. And again, like I was talking about how Wade said certain things that really helped me shift that conversation we had
where you were saying, you can still forgive someone. You don't have to agree with their actions, but you can still forgive them. That really kind of was a catalyst to kind of move me towards that as well. And
I just find that having a relationship with Jesus, man, is that it kills my ego.
Yeah.
And like we spoke about this recently. So I can tell when I act according to my ego or when I'm acting according to myself. And I find that myself, my being, is tied in with God. And my ego is just this made up little character in my head that's trying to keep me safe. But that character gets me in trouble.
Yeah.
And so when I look at building a relationship with Jesus, it's about, having faith in him, believing in him, praying, like communicating with him, abiding his commandments, following him. And so when I act out in my ego, I'm not doing those things. And so it wasn't even that long ago, a couple of weeks ago, this is such a dumb story, but I might as well share it, that like on the group chat for our jiu-jitsu community, we were just talking, laughing at stuff. And then, someone was saying something to me and I was just going back at him. We're just having a laugh, just laughing. And then someone else chimed in and they always give me crap. Well, they used to always give me crap about my football team that I follow. And I just wasn't in the mood for it. And I let my ego kick in. And my ego is like, fuck this, man. Like, this guy always says something to you. You should just say something back. And I said something pretty mean. Like, I didn't swear or anything like that, but I said something pretty mean. And next minute, it turned into this serious thing. And then this person's canceling their gym membership. And I remember talking to my wife and Timmy about it. And my wife's like, you shouldn't have said anything. Like, what would you say? And I'm like, but babe, it's not even that bad what I said. She's like, yeah, but why did you say anything? Why did you feel like you had to say anything? And it was pissing me off that she was saying that to me, because I was like, why can't you just support me in this? Like, this guy was giving me shit. I just gave him some shit back. What's the problem? But she was just highlighting, like, you're just behaving like an idiot. Like, you're lowering your standards. You're acting out of your ego. And then I reflected on that. And that's when I was messaging you boys that day. I was so upset. Like, I was so upset. Not that I'd offended him so much. Like, I am sorry for that. But I was just upset with myself, because I felt like I'd let myself down. I'd let God down in terms of the relationship that I was building with Jesus. That I was building this relationship of love and kindness and forgiveness and, turning the other cheek. And I just acted like a fool, and look what it resulted from it. And you just sometimes don't know, like, how much your words can actually cut someone. And I was so, like, sorry about that. Like, I really, really, really was. Like, I was like, fuck, like, I shouldn't have done that. And just tying this back into with my relationship with God is just that, just having now this relationship, it just really highlights, hey man, like, your ego needs to kind of disappear. It needs to go away. Because when you allow it to take charge, man, you get yourself into a lot of trouble. And I thought saying something cheeky back was just going to be a little funny thing. And it turned out to be this big, ugly mess that I feel like shit for days about, and we move on. Like, I've forgiven myself for that. Like, you learn from it. But I just now, like, really try to keep God in my heart and mind at all times when I'm making decisions. And it's like, I do ask myself that question, what would Jesus do? But I do also ask myself the question in particular instances of people that I admire and I value. Like, I do ask myself sometimes, what would Adam do in this situation? What would Shane do with this? What would my coach Mark Freeman do with this? And that's because I admire these people and their values. Sometimes I hang on to their values to act as my compass when I'm lost. And so the most powerful relationship I am building now is my relationship with God and with Jesus. And I can so tell now, man, when I steer off that relationship, when I allow the ego to take control, the mind to take control, it's a recipe for disaster. So
if you were in that same situation again tomorrow, what would you do?
I would laugh at it. I would just put a laughing emoji and turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
I really would.
And the reason why, would that be linked directly to your relationship with Christ?
It would.
Yeah.
Because, you touched on it, like about how you cannot deny his existence. You cannot deny his teachings. You cannot deny the things that he did, in his time. And so he's just taught me a significantly better way to do things, a much more loving way to do things. And I need to put love and kindness above my ego, above my confidence. There's just no need for that kind of stuff, and I couldn't believe how much it actually bothered me, man. I was like, that's what, I was sitting down, I was actually riding my skateboard at the skate park, and I was really thinking about it. I'm like, fuck, how's this bothering me so much? And it's just because internally I knew that even though that person was giving me crap, I'd lowered myself.
Yeah.
I'd lowered my standard of self. And it's like, nah, man, like, that's not okay. Like, this is, you don't realize how sharp your words can cut people sometimes. Yeah. And so in my perspective, with these lenses on, I might have thought, hey, it's just a cheeky comment, but I don't know what that other person's going through.
Yeah. I don't know. It's back to what we said earlier about we're in no control of our outside universe, but we're in control of our inside universe, right? And that's the thing, like, people can say anything, but if we get triggered by every single thing that happens, we're going to lose control of our internal universe.
Correct.
Right? Like, even when there's storms, we can keep the water calm inside. But that being said, like, sometimes we're so hard on ourselves as well. Like I always say, like, we're not these human beings having a spiritual experience right now. We're spiritual beings that are put on this earth to have human experiences. So we're meant to fuck up. We're meant to make these mistakes. But the reason why I asked you, what would you do differently tomorrow? That just shows you why that occurrence had to happen. It's to make you stronger when it happens again in the future.
Correct.
And a lot of people don't have that self-awareness because they don't want to drop the ego or the pride, right? And that's what made me kind of empathize with my father, because he wouldn't lower his ego and pride to seek those answers, you know what I mean? And it made me more grateful that his action kind of led me to that path. But yeah, I think sometimes as humans, we're just too hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And we put too much pressure on ourselves. And I think that's why a lot of people turn away from having a relationship with God, because they think that they have to be perfect. They think that it's too difficult to be what God wants them to be. But the fact is, we're all sinners. We're always going to be sinners, whether it's in a small scale or a large scale.
Yeah.
And we have to accept that, right? God wants us to accept that. God wants us to say, Lord, I'm a sinner. I sin. You know what I mean? He doesn't want us to say, oh, I'm perfect in your eyes, God.
Yeah.
I don't screw up. I'm definitely going to heaven, Lord. You know what I mean? I watched this in a video. I can't remember where I saw it, but there's an interview and he's saying, do you know what the requirements are to get into heaven? Perfection. But do you know how many perfect people are in heaven? Barely any. Right? The reason why we get let in, despite our imperfections, is because of God's mercy and God's love for us.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
His love. Like, we talk about all these relationships. You talked about Rose. I talked about Lorna. You talked about Collie Adam. We talked about all our friends that love us. No one will love us as much as God loves us. It is the definition of unconditional. Every single person I mentioned, there's always some kind of condition in there, right? You know, if I just kept going to you like, hey man, like I need something from you. I need money off you. I need your help. But then as soon as you help me, you just don't hear from me again. Or like you ask me for help and I'm like, no, man, I'm busy. But then I call you the next day, hey man, I need to borrow this from you. Eventually you're going to be like, man, fuck off. Yeah. You know what I mean? Eventually you're going to draw the line.
Yeah.
How many times have we done that with God? Every day.
Yeah.
I do it every day.
Correct.
I do it every day. I sin every day. And every day I sin. Whether it's an action or a thought, whatever, I sin. And the thing is, see, I think you asked me something in the markets today, and I'll come back to that, but I think it links to this. The Pharisees used to follow Christ all around to try call him up and stuff. They wanted they wanted him to screw up. They wanted to catch him, right? And I had to actually Google what Pharisees are because I'd always hear the word coming up. But Pharisees are pretty much like the high priest. Yeah, they were the Jewish community at the time, but they were like the fundamentalists.
Yeah.
Right. So very similar to when you see like those Christian communities in America that protest at abortion clinics and military and stuff, or like, you have Islamic fundamentalists. You have fundamentalists everywhere. But these Pharisees were like, oh no, if you go anything against the Jewish law, that's wrong.
Yeah.
But Jesus was preaching and talking about God, but sometimes it contradicted what the Pharisees believed.
Yeah.
And there was that one scene where there was someone who was, I think it was a taxman or something. So, and at the time, like they were seen as like fraudsters and stuff. Yeah. They invited Jesus over for dinner, and Jesus brought the disciples and he had dinner with him and his friends. And the Pharisees saw Jesus at the man's house and they said, how can you have dinner with these sinners?
Yeah.
And Jesus replied with, people who are not sick don't need doctors, right? So if we say that we don't sin and we have no imperfections, we don't need Christ. Why do we need God? We need him because of our sins, because of our imperfections, because of our hardships, because of our struggles, right? If we say we're all good, he's not going to help us.
Correct.
But if we say, Lord, I'm vulnerable, I'm come to you open hands and saying, please help me, be there for me, he's going to come be there for us. Do you know what I mean? And probably going to butcher this quote. It's from the Bible as well, but it's something about like you might help me with this. The something will be humbled. Oh, the honored will be the honored will be humbled, and the humble will be honored. Right? When we live this life, we're not going to take our Mercedes with us. We're not going to take our beach house with us. We're not going to take our millions of dollars with us. Right? The Pharisees have gone around talking about how they fast and how they donate money to the temples and all that stuff. But what they were putting out wasn't the same as what they were putting in.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
That's how I felt though. So when I did that comment back, it's like I'm doing this podcast, I'm talking about all this biblical stuff, I'm talking about being kind and loving. And then I acted in a certain way in a public forum, like I slipped up. That's how I felt. I felt like a fraud. And that's what I was really sorry about, for hurting someone's feelings, to be honest, and for acting in a way that was disingenuous to the way that I truly am, because I allowed my ego and my insecurities to just take control for a split second, and you don't realize how much damage it does.
Yeah. But, the fact that that event happened, and what if God wanted you to make that mistake in order for you to enhance your awareness and unlock another deeper layer about yourself that you didn't know?
I agree.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and the thing is, like I said in the last episode, God's playing chess, we're playing checkers. He's always 10 steps ahead of us.
Yeah.
He knows when we're going to fuck up. He expects us to. He doesn't expect us to be perfect, but he wants us to grow closer to him from those mistakes.
Man, I think that's an amazing way to cap it off. What an awesome episode, man.
Yeah, man, that was fun. We could have talked for ages about this. I've got so much more to talk about.
Same. We could have gone for hours.
Yeah.
I think we covered some great topics on, building a relationship with oneself, building a relationship with God, our relationships with God, our relationships with our partners, what friendship looks like, how that's changed. Man, again, thank you so much, Shane. Thank you so much, Adam. I feel blessed to be able to do this with you boys. And I can't wait for this episode to drop and share it with everyone.
Yeah. And again, thank you for the support, and
my man,
beautiful episode, man. Thank you for your time.
God bless, bro. Love you, man.